guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be drawing a portrait on Clip Studio Paint. They have so kindly sponsored this video and I'm so grateful to do this for them because it's been the only software that I've been using to draw on my computer since I started digital art. So I'm very happy and thankful to Clip Studio Paint for sponsoring today's video. For today, I want to talk about the whole process of me doing a full digital portrait. And the first thing that I'm doing is just my sketch, planning my layout and positioning my character around the frame. I also really want to have some floral elements in here, so I want to see where I want to place them around my character. And for this, I'm just using the basic pencil that was already in the app for my brush. This is one of my favorite things about Clip Studio is how everything is laid out. It's a very powerful software, but it's laid out very cleanly and I really like that. I think only the things you absolutely need are laid out in front of you, so it keeps the workspace very clean. There's only really a few brushes on each category, so it's not very overwhelming, especially if you're a mostly traditional artist like me. But even then, there's an endless amount of brushes that you can choose from. Sometimes when I'm going for a certain look, I would just go on Reddit and go on the community and look up brush recommendations. The community behind Clip Studio is really good for that too. So the next thing I'm doing is I'm just now laying down a base color and I'm filling my whole first layer on this. I just have this layer under my sketch. And once I have that, my colors are then basically all planned around that main color that I've laid down. I work around what I think would complement it and what I think would build the best on top of it. So since I laid down a basic green tone and I want that color to lead the rest of the colors, and then I just have a variation of that color to first build up my drawing, and also colors that I know won't overwhelm the colors that I plan on putting on my character. I just wanted to have a bit of dimension for the background before I start coloring her. And then when it comes to actually painting her, I'm basically doing the same thing. I just want to add more dimension to her by mapping out the shadows first. And I also made sure to use a shadow color that I think would work well with the green. So I have a very reddish purple for the shadows on her face, because I think it's a very pretty color on top of that green that I had before. But in general, I actually want this portrait to be very colorful and bright. I want to eventually add very bright colors on top of this base layers that I'm adding right now. Later on in the process, we're going to be adding some very bright colors to make it more fun. Oh, and you can see here that I have my color wheel just floating around on my canvas, and this is my favorite thing to do while I'm painting, is just take it out of that side panel and have it close to where I'm painting. That's one thing that I absolutely love about Clip Studio, is how I can move stuff around on my workspace. And since I use the color wheel the most, I really think it's a very underrated feature. I also do this for my little window for my layers later. And I would do this for my brushes too, but just when I'm filming, I don't want to have too many windows floating around on my canvas because I think it might look messy on camera. But in actuality, I use it so much more in my process. And especially for a tablet that is this huge, like this is 16 inches, so it's so big and I have a lot of free real estate, so it's almost very easy to get lost on it. And the distance from where I'm drawing to where I have my options is greater than usual, so it's nice to just have my color wheel in there. And especially right now where I'm mapping out my colors on my portrait, I think it's really helpful. Very nice and very easy to get lost in the drawing with digital art in general. But I think that's the case more with Clip Studio because it's not very intimidating for traditional artists. In fact, if you're a traditional artist who's just wanting to get into digital art, I would really recommend this one because it's very beginner friendly and you can just sketch around on it first, try to get a good feel for the app. I remember trying out digital art a few years ago and just being so overwhelmed with the many options that I could get and just like how softwares are laid out that I actually gave it up before I decided to try again a few months after. And so now we are adding more of my vibrant pops of colors. I'm adding a lot of oranges and reds because I think it would look really good on top of that mostly green base. I was just really playing around with where I'm placing those vibrant colors. And that's also why I like drawing digitally. It's because I have the freedom to just experiment on the go. And even when I'm not doing a full piece, I think as much as I love painting traditionally, some mediums are very restrictive. So I basically have to have everything planned out before I start a painting. With this, you can kind of just instinctively go with the colors that are speaking to you because you can easily go back, and especially when you work in layers, it's easy to isolate them and go back to which ones you want to take out. So at this point, there's really not that much thinking or planning. Just wanted to have some very fun colors in there for my portrait. After that, it was time to blend my colors together, and this part is extremely satisfying. I've made sure to merge all of my colored layers underneath into one so I can blend them all together. I just wanted this all to have this very soft look to it so I could then add more structure and also maybe some textures on top after. For this painting, I got to use one of the features that make Clip Studio very powerful, and that is a 3D model. I don't actually use this that much because I thought it was going to be so hard to get used to. So I never really delved into these features that I think are too advanced for me. But towards the middle of this painting, I had a really hard time figuring out the lighting that's supposed to be hitting her arm. And so what I did was just try to make my own model and pose it the exact same way as my character. And then I had the lighting changed to also reflect the one in my painting. So I could then try to see how the light was hitting the arm on the model and replicate that on my painting. I think that this is even a more basic way to use this feature, but it was so helpful to me, especially as someone who usually only works with reference photos. This was a lifesaver. So because I think I didn't have that much planning when I added in these very bright colors, what I'm doing now around this part is I'm just doing some tonal corrections on some parts of the painting, mostly to desaturate them so that it's not all just bright colors next to each other. So I wanted to pull those colors back, and I also wanted to have some shadow in there to add just a little bit more dimension. And then after that, I'm just taking my textured blending brush and blended those edges in to make it all look more natural. And then after that, once everything is laid down, I'm happy with the values and my colors are mapped out, is when I'm adding in the details. This part really reminds me of why I really love painting. It's my favorite part of the process because the beginning stages, you kind of are almost fighting with yourself, trying to plan things out, making sure everything looks great before you can get to this part. So it almost feels like a reward to get to this point. And it's always so satisfying to get there. Especially for me, where art is almost as much about the process than the actual output. And that's why I love to film my paintings, because I think it's really satisfying to see them all come together. Sometimes I even like rewatching my videos more than seeing the paintings that make them. This is a process to make it. I think it's just very rewarding to see. So for this one, I also added a paper texture, although I am showing the process of how I got there, but I think towards the very end, I turned the opacity lower than how it looks right now. This one actually came pre-installed in the app, which I think is very helpful because usually I would have to scan my own textured papers and layer them on top of my paintings. But for this, it was already on the program. I also had a lot more to choose from than this one. I just like this one more because it reminds me of some of my watercolor paper. So for the final day of this painting, I like using my iPad because I can actually draw away from my computer. I'm more relaxed generally when I'm drawing on the bed. For the final details, some of them I have taken out, but most of it I'm also looking at things that I can add onto. So this is just generally what I did for this final day on my iPad. Also adding more details to the flowers. I'm also making sure that while I am sort of carving them out more, that I'm not adding too much to them because this is sort of a smaller portrait and I don't want any of the flowers to stand out too much. I'm also just going back in and fleshing out her face more, and also just adding in some final hair strands on her hair. I also made sure that I'm using a very textured brush for it. It's just a kind of look that I really like in my brushes. And I think I modified some of these brushes to have a different paper texture, so it's really rough looking. But even then, I just used the textures that are already on my app, just so I can get the exact kind of look that I was going for. But after all of that, I am fully done with this painting. This was so fun to do. I actually think that I'm going to do more of this colorful palette in some of my traditional paintings, and I'm excited to do that. But yeah, thank you guys for joining me in this one. Clip Studio Paint is available on all major platforms for Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, and Chromebook. And there's also a free trial for anyone who wants to test it out before you want to purchase it. But yeah, that is it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me. And I will be seeing you guys again soon.